Welcome to Folktales, the city of Lagos, a sprawling titan of concrete and dreams, hummed with a restless energy that night. Neon lights bled into the humid air, painting the sky with a fierce, artificial glow, a counterpoint to the ancient stars that watched from beyond the haze. On the pinnacle of this urban majesty, a man stood, his silhouette sharp against the city's pulsing heartbeat. Kunle and Adunni, a name that echoed with power in the boardrooms and financial districts, believed he had conquered not just Lagos, but the very essence of ambition. Tonight, a $1 million deal, sealed with a handshake as firm as his resolve, meant another peak scaled, another fortune amassed. He raised a crystal glass to the indifferent stars, his laughter mingling with the deep bass of the rooftop bar, unaware that this very night, amidst the triumph and the revelry, a different kind of deal would be struck, one that would cost him not just his wealth, but the very core of who he was. For in the shadows, a woman watched, her beauty a lure, her intentions a hidden thorn, ready to pluck from him a prize far more precious than gold, leaving him an empty shell, a king without a kingdom, a man without a soul. Kunle and Adunni, impeccably tailored in a bespoke Italian suit, felt the exhilarating thrum of success vibrate through his very bones. The air on the 99th floor of the Obsidian Tower was cool, a welcome contrast to the oppressive Lagosian heat, yet it carried the scent of expensive cigars and even pricier champagne. With the ink barely dry on his latest acquisition, a game-changing port logistics company, he was unstoppable. A river without banks, his late grandfather would have warned, floods the village. But Kunle saw only endless shores, endless opportunities. His gaze swept over the city lights, each tiny spark a unit of his growing dominion. He was a maestro conducting a symphony of commerce, a modern-day monarch in a concrete kingdom. And tonight, he deserved to bask in the glory. As the celebration swelled around him, a woman detached herself from the periphery, moving with the fluid grace of a gazelle in a savanna of concrete. Her dress, a shimmering cascade of emerald green, clung to her impossibly, yet modestly, hinting at curves rather than flaunting them. Her eyes, dark and fathomless, met Kunle's across the crowded room, holding his gaze with an unnerving intensity that bypassed the usual flirtations. There was no coy smile, no manufactured charm, just a quiet understanding that seemed ancient, profound. She was Adunni, she introduced herself, her voice a low, melodious whisper that carried above the din as if only he was meant to hear. The name felt like a secret, a forgotten melody from a past life. Kunle, a man accustomed to having women flock to him like moths to a flame, found himself drawn, not by her beauty alone, but by a powerful, almost spiritual magnet that defied logic. He felt an undeniable spark, a resonance that echoed deep within him, stirring a part of his being he hadn't known existed. He was a predator, always in control. But tonight, he felt like the prey, willingly walking into a magnificently woven trap. The world outside the penthouse suite faded into an irrelevant blur as Kunle and Adunni's night deepened. Their conversation at the bar had been mesmerizing, a dance of intellect and unspoken desires. She spoke of ancient Yoruba tales with a familiarity that belied her modern attire, weaving proverbs into her sentences like delicate filigree, asking him about his dreams, not just his ambitions. A man who chases two rats, she'd said, her eyes glinting mischievously, catches neither. He found himself sharing vulnerabilities he wouldn't have confessed to his closest confidants. The air between them crackled with an almost tangible energy, a silent symphony of mutual fascination. He felt a craving he hadn't experienced in years, not for conquest, but for connection, for depth. Her touch, when it came, was a slow burn, a trail of fire across his skin, awakening forgotten senses. Back in his opulent suite, overlooking the glittering expanse of Victoria Island, their passion ignited with an intensity that bordered on the supernatural. It wasn't merely physical, it was an intertwining of essences, a merging of spirits that left him breathless, disoriented. Her scent, a mix of jasmine and something earthy, primal, filled his senses. He felt her burrowing deep, not just into his body, but into the hidden chambers of his being. As the night reached its crescendo, Kunle felt a strange sensation, a fleeting chill, as if a vital part of him, an intangible anchor, had momentarily detached. He dismissed it as the dizzying aftermath of profound pleasure, a side effect of such intense connection. He remembered seeing her eyes glow with an inexplicable, almost ancient light in the soft, ambient glow of the room. A fleeting image he later questioned if it had been a trick of the light or a whisper of a dream. Exhausted, yet strangely invigorated, Kunle drifted into a sleep deeper than any he had known, a sleep filled with vivid, confusing dreams of ancient ceremonies and whispered incantations, dreams that felt less like imagination and more like distant, forgotten memories. The morning sun, usually a beacon of opportunity for Kunle, felt like a harsh interrogation lamp. He woke slowly, an unfamiliar lethargy weighing him down. The other side of the king-sized bed was empty, the sheets cool and undisturbed, as if Adunni had been a phantom. Her absence left a hollow ache, a profound emptiness that went beyond the usual post-coital melancholia. He called out her name, his voice raspy, but only the hum of the air conditioning answered. A faint, almost imperceptible scent of jasmine lingered, a teasing reminder of her presence, or perhaps her recent departure. He stumbled to the bathroom, catching his reflection in the mirror. A stranger stared back, his eyes dull, lacking their usual sharp, predatory glint. He tried to shake off the peculiar malaise, attributing it to too much champagne and too little sleep. But as the day progressed, a creeping dread began to settle in. His mind, usually a labyrinth of strategic brilliance, felt foggy, his thoughts disjointed. He misplaced his phone, forgot an important meeting with his executive assistant, and found himself staring blankly at documents that hours earlier he would have dissected with surgical precision. The electric energy that had always fueled him, the very essence of his drive and ambition, seemed to have evaporated, leaving him feeling adrift. His usual morning ritual, a vigorous workout and a precise breakfast, felt like an insurmountable task. He tried to brush off the feeling, to attribute it to a simple hangover. But deep down, a whisper of a forgotten proverb echoed in his mind. When the head is restless, the body cannot find peace. The first cracks in his carefully constructed empire, the initial tremors of a devastating earthquake, had begun. The subtle shifts in Kunle's demeanor quickly escalated into catastrophic failures. A crucial presentation, prepared meticulously for weeks, went disastrously wrong. His words stumbled, his arguments lacked conviction, and his usually flawless charisma deserted him entirely. The million-dollar acquisition, the very deal he'd celebrated, began to unravel due to oversights he, the astute Kunle Adunni, should never have missed. His investors, once fervent in their belief, now eyed him with growing concern. His empire, built on the bedrock of his unparalleled acumen and unwavering self-assuredness, started to crumble like a sandcastle against an unforgiving tide. He felt like a driver without a steering wheel, his once powerful vehicle careening wildly, uncontrollably. Kunle tried to rationalize, to blame external factors, but the truth gnawed at him. He was the common denominator in every failure. His once sharp intuition, his sixth sense for calculated risks, had vanished. He felt an inexplicable fatigue, a spiritual exhaustion that sleep couldn't cure. He looked into his own eyes in the mirror and saw a growing emptiness, a vacuum where his fiery passion and unwavering determination once resided. It was then, amidst the ruins of his confidence and the mounting wreckage of his business, that a chilling thought crystallized. Adunni. It wasn't merely that she was gone, it was what she had taken. The memory of that intense, almost spiritual convergence, the fleeting chill, the dreams of incantations, it all coalesced into a terrifying realization. She had taken something vital, something intangible but undeniably real. He had to find her. The search began with a desperation he had never known, for without her, he was merely a ghost in his own life, a king without a soul. Consumed by a desperation that gnawed at his very core, Kunle abandoned all conventional methods. His business advisors were baffled, his family concerned by his erratic behavior. He began his solitary search for Adunni, first through the elite circles of Lagos's nightlife, then through more obscure channels. But Adunni had vanished without a trace, leaving behind no digital footprint, no lingering contacts. Like a whisper in the wind, she was gone. Frustrated, drained, and increasingly convinced that his predicament was beyond the realm of logic, Kunle remembered the old stories his grandmother used to tell. Tales of spirits and the unseen world. He thought of her brother, Uncle Bayo, a retired academic with a deep reverence for ancestral traditions, now living quietly in a modest compound in Surulere. Uncle Bayo, a man whose wisdom was as deep as the ocean, listened patiently, his eyes, usually twinkling with humor, now filled with a solemn knowing. Kunle recounted the night, the strange connection, the inexplicable emptiness. Bayo stroked his beard, a long, thoughtful pause stretching between them, punctuated only by the distant sounds of the city. Finally, he spoke, his voice a low rumble. Kunle, my son, when a bird dances in the middle of the road, the drum is in the bush. You thought you were celebrating a deal, but you walked into a spiritual snare. He spoke of Ori, the inner head, the essence of one's destiny and being, and how it could be tampered with, taken, by those who knew the ancient ways, especially by those who carried a deep grievance. He warned that some women, wronged and seeking justice, learn to reclaim power through channels unknown to the modern man. You chased temporary pleasure, Bayo said, his gaze piercing, and neglected the warnings from a river without banks. Your ambition made you blind to the whispers of an ancient spirit seeking balance. He spoke of Ajay, spiritual vengeance, and the price of unchecked desire, urging Kunle to look beyond the physical, into the realm of the ancestors and the spirits that walk amongst us, for only there would he find the true nature of his loss. Armed with Uncle Bayo's ominous warnings, Kunle's search transformed. He no longer looked for a woman in high society, but for a shadow, a whisper, a trace of ancient energy amidst the modern chaos. He followed vague leads, navigating the labyrinthine alleys of bustling Balogan Market, the quiet, almost forgotten pathways of older neighborhoods, and the spiritual enclaves hinted at by Bio. He spoke to market women, humble street vendors, and even a few of the city's unhoused, their street-honed senses sometimes more attuned to the unseen. Slowly, painstakingly, a fragmented image of Adunni began to emerge, not as the sophisticated woman from the rooftop bar, but as a figure woven into the fabric of the city's underbelly. She wasn't a stranger to hardship. Whispers spoke of a challenging past, a young woman from a respectable but struggling family in a village outside Ibadan, forced to make her way in the unforgiving metropolis. There was talk of a promising academic career cut short, a fiancé who abandoned her for a wealthier bride, leaving her with a shattered heart, and the gnawing stigma of a broken engagement in a society where marriage was paramount. One elderly woman, selling rare herbs in a dusty stall, remembered Adunni as a girl of fierce spirit, but also profound sorrow. She knew pain like an old friend, the woman rasped, her eyes cloudy with age, and when pain sits too long, it can turn to a bitter wisdom, sharp as a broken calabash. The trail led Kunle to a quiet community in the heart of the city, a place where village traditions stubbornly coexisted with urban life, where jollof rice simmered on open fires and ancestral spirits were still honored. He realized Adunni wasn't a random encounter, but a deeply wounded soul. Her beauty, a mask, her passion a conduit for a meticulously planned vengeance. His journey was no longer just about retrieving his soul. It was about understanding the depths of a woman's pain, the quiet struggles that could empower a person to wield ancient, terrifying forces. The more Kunle delved, the clearer Adunni's story became, a heartbreaking tapestry of unfulfilled dreams and systemic betrayals. He discovered that her former fiancé, a man named Femi, a promising young architect, had been seduced by a prestigious family with powerful connections, abandoning Adunni just weeks before their planned wedding. This public humiliation, compounded by the whispers and judgments of their community, had left her devastated. In our society, a middle-aged woman explained to Kunle, her voice heavy with empathy, a woman is often defined by her marriage, by her children. To be cast aside, especially after a promise, is a wound that never truly heals. It can fester, turn to bitterness. Adunni, a woman of fierce intellect, had found her options severely limited in a patriarchal society that offered little recourse for a wronged woman without powerful allies. But the pain ran deeper. Kunle learned through oblique conversations that Adunni had also suffered the profound agony of infertility. After her heart was broken by Femi, she had sought comfort in a brief, ill-fated union with another man, only to discover she could not conceive. The crushing weight of this stigma, the silent judgment from family and community, had pushed her to the brink. For a woman in her culture, the inability to bear children was often seen as a curse, a failing. It was this double burden, the public shaming of a broken engagement and the private anguish of infertility, that had driven Adunni from her familiar path, compelling her to seek solace and power in the ancient, often forgotten wisdom of her ancestors. She had turned to an onisigan, a traditional healer with deep knowledge of herbal remedies and spiritual practices, not for healing, but for understanding, for a way to reclaim what society had taken from her. She had sought a way to level the playing field, to make powerful men feel the emptiness she had endured. Her act was not mere theft, it was a desperate, calculated attempt at cosmic balance, a cry for justice from a woman pushed to the very edge. Kunle finally found Adunni in an unexpected sanctuary, a small, unassuming traditional healing center nestled within a bustling old Lagos compound. far from the gleaming towers of his world. The air was thick with the scent of herbs and incense, the rhythmic beat of a mortar and pestle providing a soothing backdrop. She sat on a woven mat, her eyes closed, seemingly in a trance, her emerald dress replaced by modest, hand-dyed cotton. When she opened her eyes, they held the same ancient depth, but now also a flicker of recognition, and perhaps a hint of weariness. "You found me," she stated, her voice devoid of surprise. "The river always returns to its source, no matter how winding the journey." Kunle, his voice hoarse with desperation, demanded to know why, demanded the return of what she had taken. Adunni merely smiled, a sad, knowing curve of her lips. "I took nothing that was not offered, Kunle. You gave me your essence, your drive, your ore, the very core of your destiny, fueled by your ambition. You, like the men who wronged me, sought only temporary pleasure, never seeing the lasting consequences of your actions, never feeling the emptiness they left behind." She explained how she had performed a spiritual tethering, drawing a part of his vivacity into herself, not to steal his physical wealth, but to make him understand the profound void she and countless other women had been forced to bear. "You built an empire on ambition, but lacked the wisdom of the ancestors," she continued, her voice gaining strength. "The understanding that true power is not just taking, but giving, not just wealth, but balance. Owo yato si iwa. Money is different from character. Your character had forgotten its roots." She made him see that his soul wasn't stolen in a physical sense, but rather a vital part of his energetic being had been detached and held, a consequence of his own unchecked desire and the collective imbalance she sought to correct. A desperate, albeit extreme, act of reclaiming agency in a world that had stripped her of hers. He was finally face to face with not a thief, but a wounded priestess of justice, wielding the unseen forces of a heartbroken past. The truth of Adunni's words, sharp and undeniable, cut through Kunle's remaining arrogance. He saw his own ambition reflected in the faces of the men who had wronged her, the men who had pursued wealth and pleasure at the expense of others, dignity and well-being. He was suddenly humbled, recognizing the profound imbalance he had unwittingly contributed to. "What must I do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper, the once powerful CEO stripped bare of his defenses. Adunni looked at him, her gaze softening, not with forgiveness yet, but with a quiet challenge. "Your Ori is not mine to keep forever," she said, "for it is your destiny. But to restore it fully, you must understand the true meaning of balance, of communal harmony, and the struggles of those you so easily overlooked." The conditions she laid out were not for money, for she had no need for his wealth. Instead, she demanded a different kind of payment, one rooted in core African values. Kunle had to use his influence, his resources, not for personal gain, but for genuine communal good. He had to establish a foundation dedicated to empowering women who had faced similar societal betrayals and the stigma of infertility, providing them with education, vocational training, and psychological support. He was to fund traditional healers and community elders who sought to bridge the gap between ancient wisdom and modern societal challenges. Furthermore, he had to undertake a personal journey of atonement, visiting the villages where his own family wealth had originated, understanding the needs of the people, and investing in sustainable projects that uplifted entire communities, not just privileged individuals. He was to learn humility by serving, by listening to the voices he had once dismissed as irrelevant. "A single hand cannot tie a bundle," she imparted. You must learn to weave your thread into the fabric of your community, not just tear it for your own gain. Only then will your essence find its true home and your spirit be truly free. Kunle Adunni embarked on the path of redemption with a renewed purpose. The restoration of his Oribar was not an instantaneous magical act, but a gradual process. As he fulfilled each of Adunni's conditions, he poured his vast resources and formidable intellect into the foundation for women, personally overseeing outreach programs in rural communities and organizing workshops in bustling Lagos. He learned to listen, truly listen, to the stories of resilience and heartbreak, and he saw Adunni's pain reflected in countless other faces. He traveled to his ancestral village, not as a conqueror, but as a student, learning about sustainable farming, sponsoring educational initiatives, and funding projects that honored traditional crafts. He ate fufu and egusi soup with elders, knelt to receive their blessings, and understood the interconnectedness of all things, the ancient wisdom that wealth without communal well-being was hollow. As he worked, tirelessly and with genuine humility, a profound transformation occurred. His strategic brilliance returned, but now it was tempered with empathy and guided by a deeper understanding of human flourishing. The emptiness that had plagued him slowly receded, replaced not by his old hubris, but by a quiet strength, a sense of belonging. The flicker in his eyes returned, but it was no longer the glint of ambition, but the warm glow of purpose. He rebuilt his empire, but on new foundations of ethical responsibility and social impact, becoming a respected leader, not just for his wealth, but for his wisdom and his heart. Adunni, having witnessed his genuine transformation, appeared to him one final time, her eyes now serene. "The spirit that gives seeks balance, Kunle," she said, a soft smile gracing her lips. "You have found your way back to yourself, and in doing so, you have helped others find theirs." She disappeared as quietly as she had arrived, a guardian spirit of justice. Kunle never saw her again, but he carried her lesson always. He learned that true wealth lay not in what one acquired, but in what one contributed, that a leader's power was measured by the well-being of his people, and that a soul, once lost to unchecked desire, could be reclaimed through humility, honesty, and an unwavering commitment to communal harmony. His story became a modern folktale, whispered through the vibrant, ever-changing streets of Lagos, a testament to the enduring power of ancient wisdom in a new age. If you enjoyed the story, then like, subscribe, and share this story with your loved ones. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from.